I knew something was wrong the moment 3 HOA board members marched up my driveway like they were serving a royal decree. No greetings. No smile, just clipboards, cold stares, and the kind of confidence people only get when they think they own the world. My new barn wasn't even finished yet, but they acted as if I'd built a fortress pointed directly at their homes. The tallest one, a woman named Cheryl, who spoke like every sentence. She said came with a threat, stepped forward and declared, "You're trespassing on HOA property. This barn is on our land." Her voice echoed across my fields, like she just delivered a court verdict. That was the moment I felt the switch flip inside me, because I knew something they didn't. I knew exactly where the property lines were. I knew every inch of this land, not from online records, not from a vague HOA map, but from the original survey documents my grandfather kept locked in a rusted metal box. Documents older than the entire HOA itself. They thought I was some clueless new landowner they could intimidate. They had no idea who they were dealing with or what was about to unfold. For weeks, I'd kept to myself after moving back to the family ranch. My grandfather left me these 28 acres, and building a barn was the first step in bringing the place back to life. But ever since the HOA development popped up to the south over a decade ago, rumors spread that the board acted like tyrants. They fined people for mailbox colors, lawn heights, even the angle of holiday lights. To them, control wasn't a responsibility, it was entertainment. So when they told me my barn was illegally placed, I calmly asked how they figured that out. Cheryl tapped her clipboard like it contained sacred truth. "We reviewed our boundary documents," she said. "Your structure sits 12 feet into our subdivision." I didn't laugh, but I wanted to. Instead, I told them I'd verify the claim myself. That's when Cheryl smirked and said, "You can fight it if you want, but we always win." Always, that word stuck with me. So that same evening, I pulled out the metal box from my grandfather's closet. Inside were the original surveys, hand-drawn maps, signed coordinates, even the markers buried along the old fence line. And as I compared them to the HOA's boundaries on the county website, something became very clear, something the HOA never expected. If my barn was on their land, then half their houses were sitting on mine. The next morning, I drove straight to the county recorder's office with my grandfather's survey maps tucked under my arm like sacred relics. I wasn't looking for a fight. I just wanted clarity. But deep down, a part of me hoped I was wrong, because if I wasn't, then the HOA wasn't just mistaken. They were catastrophically wrong. Inside the office, the clerk, an older man named Harris who'd worked there for decades, took one look at the yellowed maps and raised an eyebrow. "Haven't seen originals like these in years," he murmured. He laid them flat on the counter, matching them with the official county grids. Then he pulled up the current HOA development map on his monitor. The deeper he went, the more his face tightened. After a long silence, he finally turned to me. "Where did you say the HOA claims your barn sits?" 12 feet into their land, I replied. He exhaled slowly, then tapped the screen. "Son, their entire southern row of houses is built 37 feet onto yours." I felt my stomach drop, not from fear, but from the realization of how big this was. The HOA board had spent years acting like they ruled the area. Now it turns out they were the ones trespassing, by a margin so large it wasn't even debatable. Harris printed certified copies for me, along with overlay maps proving the boundaries beyond question. "You'll need a lawyer," he warned. "This isn't a small dispute. This is going to get loud." He was right. By the time I drove home, the HOA board was already waiting for me again, this time standing beside a county code enforcement truck they had apparently called. Cheryl folded her arms, ready to gloat. "We're issuing a stop work order on your barn," she announced. "Non-compliance may result in fines." I didn't respond. Instead, I handed her the certified documents. She took them with a smirk, but the moment her eyes scanned the first page, the color drained from her face. Her smirk faltered, then vanished completely. She flipped through the pages faster, each turn more frantic than the last. Finally, she looked up at me, stunned. This can't be right." "Oh, it's right," I said quietly. "The county confirmed it." The other board members crowded around Cheryl, whispering harshly, panic creeping into their voices. For the first time, they weren't confident. They weren't loud. They weren't in control. They were scared. Because the truth had flipped the entire situation upside down, and they knew court was coming. The HOA tried to recover fast, faster than I expected. By the next morning, they had already sent out a community alert email to all residents, claiming I was attempting to seize HOA land through outdated documents. They accused me of forging surveys, manipulating county staff, even threatening the harmony of the neighborhood. It would have been funny if it wasn't such a reckless lie. Within hours, people from the subdivision were driving past my property slowly, craning their necks toward the barn as if I'd transformed it into a missile silo. One couple even stopped at my gate and shouted, "You're not getting our house!" before speeding off like I had a bulldozer hidden behind the barn. Clearly, the HOA was panicking, and panicking people do stupid things. That afternoon, I received a formal letter from the board stating they were filing an injunction to force me to cease all fraudulent claims and to compel removal of the structure trespassing on HOA land. I almost laughed. Instead, I forwarded the letter to the attorney Harris recommended, an older woman named Dana Whitmore. When she arrived at my home the next day, she examined all the documents carefully. She didn't talk much, but the more she read, the more a slow, knowing smile spread across her face. "This isn't a boundary dispute," she finally said. "This is a historic surveying error the HOA never bothered to verify. And since your grandfather's title predates the subdivision, your claim is ironclad." She tapped the map gently. "If this goes to court, they're in serious trouble." "What kind of trouble?" I asked. Dana leaned back. "Worst case? Their houses are technically encroaching on your land. You could legally demand rent, demand the removal of the encroaching structures, or force the HOA to buy the land from you at market value." That made me pause. I didn't want to destroy anyone's home, but I also wasn't going to be bullied. "First step," Dana continued, "is filing a counterclaim. We'll request a full boundary resurvey, a title review, and a judicial declaration of the true property lines." And so we did. The moment the HOA received notice of my counterclaim, the facade cracked even more. Cheryl showed up at my property in a last-ditch attempt at intimidation. But this time she wasn't smug. She was shaken, her voice uneven. "We can work something out," she said. "You don't have to take this to court." I looked her dead in the eye. "You should have thought about that before trying to shut down my barn." Her jaw tightened and she stormed off without another word. The war had officially begun, and the HOA knew they were the ones standing on shaky ground. Court day arrived faster than I expected, and the HOA walked in like a marching brigade. Matching blazers, matching binders, matching scowls. Cheryl led them, chin high, acting as if confidence alone could bend reality in her favor. But the moment the judge entered, she stiffened, clutching her paperwork like a life vest on a sinking ship. My attorney, Dana, opened calmly. She presented the historical surveys, the certified county overlays, and even an affidavit from Harris confirming that the HOA's development map had relied on a flawed, incomplete survey done decades after my grandfather's original boundaries were legally recorded. Her presentation was clean, structured, and devastating. Then came the moment that sucked all the air out of the courtroom. Dana displayed a large, color-coded boundary map on the screen, my property in blue, the HOA development in red. The encroachment was unmistakable. An entire row of HOA houses sat deep inside the blue zone, some by nearly 40 feet. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Several HOA homeowners sitting in the audience gasped. One woman covered her mouth. Another whispered harshly at Cheryl, "You told us he was lying!" The judge leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. "Mrs. Langley," he said to Cheryl, "do you have any evidence that contradicts these surveys?" Cheryl shuffled her papers, flipping desperately as if hoping a miracle page would appear. Sweat beaded on her forehead. "Your Honor, we believe his documents are outdated. The HOA's survey is newer." The judge raised an eyebrow. Newer does not mean superior, especially when the original deeds supersede your development's filings. Do you have proof his surveys are incorrect? She swallowed hard. Not directly. Do you have any legal basis, he continued, for issuing fines or stop work orders on land that, according to these documents, is not yours? Her silence was the answer. Dana stood. Your Honor, we ask for a judicial declaration affirming the true boundary lines, voiding the HOA's stop work order, and halting all attempts at enforcement until the encroachment issue is resolved. The judge nodded slowly. Given the evidence, that is reasonable. He turned back to Cheryl. You and your board may need to prepare for further legal actions from your homeowners. This appears to be a significant mistake on the HOA's part. The room erupted. Angry whispers, panicked murmurs, and frantic looks exchanged between board members. Cheryl sat frozen, staring straight ahead, as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. The judge's gavel struck once. Boundary lines will be officially reaffirmed by court order. The HOA is prohibited from taking any action against the defendant until the process is complete. The final hearing was more like a reckoning than a legal proceeding. Word had spread through the neighborhood that the HOA's board had been caught in a massive encroachment error. Reporters from the local paper even showed up, cameras rolling as the homeowners filed into the small, crowded courtroom. Cheryl and her board members entered last, faces tight, shoulders tense. They knew this was no longer about the barn. They were fighting to save their credibility. Dana walked in confidently, carrying the stack of certified documents, surveys, and affidavits that would end the HOA's nightmare. I followed quietly, feeling the weight of decades of my grandfather's hard work and trust in that metal box in my hands. This was bigger than a single barn. It was about the truth, history, and rightful ownership. The judge called the court to order, and the proceedings began. Cheryl tried once more to argue that the HOA's records were accurate, but Dana's response was surgical. She laid out the original deeds, compared them meticulously with every HOA map, and even demonstrated, using the county's geospatial data, how every disputed house encroached on my land. Each slide, each chart, and each affidavit chipped away at Cheryl's confidence until it was impossible for her to maintain her stance. Finally, the judge leaned back and spoke with a measured tone. Based on the evidence presented, it is clear that the defendant's property lines predate the HOA's development, and substantial portions of the HOA's structures are located on the defendant's land. The court hereby affirms the defendant's property boundaries and declares any stop work orders or fines issued by the HOA null and void. The words hit like a thunderclap. Cheryl's face went pale. Her eyes darted around, searching for some loophole, some magical reprieve. There was none. Dana turned to me with a subtle nod, and I allowed myself the faintest smile, feeling the tension drain from my shoulders. The barn, the property, the truth. It was all mine. After the courtroom emptied, I stood outside, looking at the barn in the soft afternoon light. It had taken surveys, legal battles, and the courage to stand up to an entire HOA board. But the land was secure. More than that, justice had been served, not with rage but with truth, evidence, and patience. The HOA's board members slunk away quietly, leaving whispers behind like ghosts of authority that never truly existed. The neighborhood would talk for years about the day the barn and the rightful owner won. But I didn't care about the gossip. I cared about restoring what my family had built and making sure the land stayed in my hands. As the sun set over the fields, the barn finally felt complete. Not just a structure of wood and nails, but a symbol. A symbol that no amount of intimidation, no inflated sense of power could replace the law, the truth, and persistence. My grandfather's legacy was safe, my property was secure, and for the first time in a long while, I felt entirely at home.